My mother was the quietest person I have ever known. Not shy, not cold, not absent, just quiet. In the way of deep water, still on the surface, and full of things you cannot see from where you are standing. For most of my life, I misread that stillness. I called it distance. I called it indifference. In my worst moments, in the angry, confused years of my 20s, I called it a failure to love me the way I needed. I was wrong. I found her diary on a Sunday afternoon in October, 3 years after she passed. I had been putting off clearing her house for longer than I want to admit. Some rooms you are not ready to enter, some boxes you are not ready to open. But that Sunday, something shifted. I went in. And in a shoebox at the back of her wardrobe, beneath a folded prayer shawl and a bundle of old letters tied with kitchen twine, I found a small brown diary with a brass clasp. I almost didn't open it. I am so grateful that I did. Her name was Hannah Mustafa, born in Alexandria, Egypt in 1958, the third of 5 children, 2 brothers, 2 sisters, in a household that was, by her own rare descriptions, full of noise and food and the particular beautiful chaos of a large family in a small space. She had come to England at 24. A marriage arrangement, not forced, she always said, but expected. The kind of expectation that in those years, in that world, carried the full weight of family honor and left very little room for a young woman's private reservations. My father's name was Tariq. He was handsome, educated, and possessed of a charm that worked extremely well at a distance. Up close, over time, behind closed doors, he was a different kind of man entirely. Not physically dangerous, but cold in a way that has no warmth to counterbalance it. Critical in a way that did not teach, it only diminished. The kind of husband who made you feel, over many years and through many small cruelties, that you were somehow always failing at the task of being yourself. They had me, and then my brother Samir, 2 years apart. And then they had 30 more years of a marriage that I watched from the inside and never fully understood. I never understood why she stayed. I asked her once when I was 26 and freshly furious about something he had said at a family dinner. We were in her kitchen. She was washing dishes, always moving, always doing something with her hands. "Why do you stay with him?" I said, bluntly, the way you do when you're young and certain that your clarity is wisdom. She was quiet for a long moment. Then she said, "Some questions do not have answers that fit into words, Leila." And she handed me a dish to dry. I was so frustrated by that answer. I understand it now completely. I want to be fair to my childhood, because it was not entirely dark. There was warmth in our house. My mother made it. She cooked with an attention and a love that I did not appreciate until I was grown and on my own, and realized that not everyone's mother made bread from scratch on Friday mornings, or knew exactly how you liked your tea, or sat with you through a fever with a patience so complete it felt like a physical thing. She was present in the ways that mattered most. She came to every school play, every parents' evening, every small ceremony that schools manufacture to mark the passage of childhood. She helped with homework without making you feel foolish for not knowing. She listened. She was a remarkable listener, without interrupting, without redirecting to herself, without offering solutions before you had finished the problem. But she never spoke about herself. That was the thing. That was always the thing. Ask her about her day, she would tell you briefly, and then ask about yours. Ask her how she was feeling, and she would smile and say fine, and then notice something that needed doing and go and do it. Her inner life her fears, her regrets, her private griefs, these were kept behind a door that was always politely, firmly closed. I watched her take so much without complaint. Comments from my father that would have made me leave a room, she absorbed them without visible reaction. Decisions he made about the household, about money, about holidays and relatives and the shape of their shared life, she accepted them with a quiet I mistook for contentment. Samir accepted it too, mostly. He was easier with my father, the way sons sometimes are. He could laugh off things I couldn't move past. But I was always watching my mother, trying to read the stillness, trying to understand what was behind it. I spent years coming up with the wrong answer. I told myself she didn't feel things deeply, that she had made her peace through a kind of emotional blunting, a survival mechanism that had slowly become her nature. I told myself that her silence was a form of giving up. I did not know. I simply did not know. The diary began in 1987. I was 4 years old. Samir was 2. The handwriting in the early pages was careful, the handwriting of someone who had decided to do something deliberate, as if she had sat down one day and thought, I need somewhere to put this. And so she had. The first entry was 3 sentences long. She wrote, I am starting this because I have no one to talk to. Not because there is no one who loves me, there is, but because what I carry is too heavy to put on anyone I love, so I will put it here instead. I read those 3 sentences sitting on the floor of her wardrobe room, and I began to cry before I had reached any of the actual weight of what she had written, because in those 3 sentences was the answer to 20 years of misreading her. She hadn't been closed off because she didn't feel. She had been closed off because she felt everything, and she had made a conscious daily decision to carry it herself rather than pass it to the people she loved. Her silence was not absence. It was protection. I read the diary in one sitting. 4 hours on the floor of her wardrobe room, the light changing outside the window as the afternoon moved through and evening came. What she had written over 30 years was not a catalogue of complaints. She was not a bitter woman, and that, perhaps, was the most extraordinary thing of all. She wrote with a remarkable clarity and even, in places, with humor. She observed. She reflected. She recorded the small, beautiful things alongside the difficult ones. She wrote about us, Samir and me, with a love so specific and so attentive that I had to stop several times and simply sit with it. She noticed everything. My childhood worries, the way I chewed my pencil when I was thinking, the exact shade of determination on my face when I had decided something. These observations, recorded in her quiet handwriting, were the most seen I have ever felt in my life. And she had never said any of it out loud. She had put it in a book that she kept in a shoebox beneath a prayer shawl, because she did not want us to know how much she saw us. Because she thought, perhaps, that knowing might make us feel the weight of being loved so carefully. Or perhaps because showing it would have required opening the door, and opening the door would have meant letting us see everything, including what she was enduring. My father was not a monster. I want to say that, because the world is full of easy stories where the difficult person is a clear villain, and this is not that kind of story. He was a man shaped by his own wounds, a difficult father, a culture that had given him a narrow idea of what strength looked like, years of financial pressure that he expressed through control rather than conversation. He was capable of generosity. He had moments of real warmth. He loved us, in the way people love when they have never been taught how to show it, without also somehow making it conditional. But what my mother wrote about, across 30 years of diary entries, was the texture of living beside a man who made her feel small. Not through violence, through language. through the particular cruelty of a person who has decided that your instincts are wrong, your perceptions are unreliable, your feelings are an inconvenience. She wrote about the arguments that were never arguments, because he did not argue. He simply stated his version of reality with such complete authority that questioning it felt like a kind of madness. She wrote about the way she had learned over years to second-guess herself, to shrink her opinions before she offered them, to preemptively minimize herself so that there was less of her to diminish. And she wrote about why she stayed. Not because she had given up, not because she was without options, but because she had looked at Samir and me and made a calculation, a mother's calculation, quiet and unsentimental, that the harm of leaving was greater than the harm of staying, that we needed stability more than we needed her freedom, that she could absorb what was required of her and keep her children in one place, in one school, in one life, without fracture. She wrote, "I do not think this makes me weak. I think this makes me a mother." One day, perhaps Leila will understand the things a woman can hold when she has decided that her children's peace matters more than her own. I put the diary down when I read that. I walked to her kitchen window, the same window where I had stood beside her so many times, and I looked out at her garden. Still winter bare, still hers, and I understood for the first time what she had been doing all those years at the kitchen sink. She had not been switched off. She had been holding everything together with her bare hands and making it look like nothing. The last entry in the diary was written 6 weeks before she died. She had known by then that the illness was serious. She had not told Samir or me the full extent of it. She had downplayed the prognosis, managed our worry, and kept us from the shape of what was coming with the same skill she had applied to everything else in her life. The last entry was the longest in the diary, 12 pages. Written in smaller handwriting than usual, as if she was trying to fit everything remaining into the space she had left. She wrote about her life without bitterness and without false peace. She wrote about the things she was proud of, her garden, her children, and her ability to make something beautiful out of whatever she was given. She wrote about the things she regretted, not the staying, interestingly, but the silence. The years of not telling us directly in words how much she loved us, how closely she had watched us, how astonished she was by who we had become. She wrote, "I was afraid that saying it would make it smaller, that words would not be enough, and so I said nothing and let the nothing speak for itself. I think that was a mistake. I think love should be said out loud, even imperfectly, even when the words are not equal to the feeling, especially then." And then, in the very last paragraph, she wrote something she had clearly intended for me specifically. She wrote, "If Leila finds this, and I think she will because she has always been the one who looks for things, I want her to know that her anger made sense. Her frustration made sense. She was right that I was holding back. She was wrong about why. I was quiet because I loved her too much to make her carry what I was carrying. And I would make the same choice again. But I hope she can also carry this. She was never, not for a single day of her life, anything less than the best thing that ever happened to me." 6 seconds. I sat in her house until it was fully dark outside. And then I called my brother, and I read him the last page. My father is still alive. He is 73 now. He lives alone in the same house, smaller, somehow, than I remember it. He has softened in the way that some difficult people do when age takes away the things they used to use as armor. He cried at her funeral in a way I had never seen him cry at anything. Loudly. without control. A grief so raw it seemed to surprise even him, as if he had not known, until she was gone, how much of his own life she had been holding in place. Karma in this story is not revenge. It is not ruin. It is the moment when my father stood at my mother's grave and understood, perhaps for the first time, what he had been given and how he had held it. That is its own kind of justice, quiet, internal, arriving too late to change anything but the understanding. As for me, I am different now, in ways I am still mapping. I speak more. I say the things I mean, out loud, even when the words feel inadequate. I tell my daughter, she is 9, she is extraordinary. I tell her I love her with a directness my mother couldn't manage, because my mother's diary taught me that love kept entirely on the inside is love only partially given. I keep the diary on my nightstand. Some nights I open it to a random page and read a paragraph of her voice, her observations, her particular patient way of seeing the world. It is the closest thing to a conversation I will ever have with her again. And it is, somehow, enough. Silence is not always emptiness. Sometimes it is the fullest thing in the room. If you have a mother, living or gone, whose quiet you have never fully understood, I want to gently offer this. There may be more behind it than you can see. Not always, but sometimes the people who say the least are carrying the most, and the weight of what they hold is a form of love so large it has no words adequate to contain it. And if you are a mother yourself, if you are someone who has been quietly enduring, quietly protecting, quietly absorbing what life has brought, I see you. Your silence has not gone unnoticed. Even if no one has said so yet. This has been Soul Tales. My name is Leila. And somewhere, in a shoebox beneath a prayer shawl, my mother left me the most complete love letter I have ever received. She just didn't call it that.